Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of 2 Corinthians. We're still in 2 Corinthians chapter 1. Today we're going to start reading at verse 12. But before we start this paragraph, I want to refer back to the paragraph we looked at yesterday, especially verse 9. Now remember this paragraph that we just finished up in yesterday's session. Paul had been talking about the troubles and the persecution he had endured while in the great city of Ephesus in Asia. He had been under intense pressure and harassment, but God had delivered him. God had delivered him. But I want you to notice especially verse 9, in which he talks about what God had taught him through this all. Notice what he says in verse 9. But this happened, referring to the tribulation, the harassment, the pressure he was under from those who opposed the gospel. But this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God, who raises the dead. Paul said God used this moment of persecution, this moment of harassment, this moment of pressure to teach me to rely more and more on him. To teach me not to rely on myself or depend on my own strength, but to lean entirely on the grace of God. I have discovered that God can be utterly relied upon. And in the trying times, he taught me more about the life of faith because I've learned to lean on him. He is the one who delivers from the dead. He raises the dead, and he delivers us from all trouble. So Paul had learned, even in trying times, to rely entirely on God. And I think he would recommend that to us. Learn to lean on God. And even in difficult times, you'll find his grace is sufficient. He will bring you through. You can depend on him. Now, he begins the next paragraph in verse 12. Now, it seems there was a little tension between Paul and some of the Corinthians. Some had even criticized Paul for saying he's going to do one thing and doing another. So in this next paragraph, he feels the need to defend himself. It seems he had announced to them some travel plans that had to be changed, and some of them criticized him for changing his travel plans and said, well, Paul's not really operating with integrity. He says one thing and he does another. So in this next paragraph, he begins to defend himself. Notice what he says. Now, this is our boast. Our conscience testifies that we have conducted ourselves in the world, especially in our relationship with you, with integrity and godly sincerity. Paul says, listen, I've always operated with integrity in what I said to you. We've done so relying not on worldly wisdom, but on the grace of God. For we do not write you anything you cannot read or understand. And I hope that, as you've understood us in part, you will come to understand fully, so that you can boast of us just as we will boast of you in the day of the Lord Jesus. Now, why does Paul need to defend himself that he's always operated with integrity? It has to do with his travel plans. That's what he says next, verse 15. Because I was confident of this, I wanted to visit you first so that you might benefit twice. I wanted to visit you on my way to Macedonia, and then to come back to you from Macedonia, and then to have you send me on my way to Judea. Was I fickle when I intended to do this? Or do I make my plans in a worldly manner, so that in the same breath I say both yes, yes, and no, no? What is Paul referring to? Now remember, on his third missionary journey, he had spent about 3 years in the city of Ephesus in Asia Minor. That's where he had that trouble, that persecution. During this time, he'd been writing these letters, 1 Corinthians, and now he's writing 2 Corinthians. Now, as his ministry in Ephesus came to an end, his intent was to visit the Corinthian church again. And it seemed at some point he had told them, I'm going to come to you first in southern Greece and visit you, and then I'm going to go to Macedonia in northern Greece and visit the churches there, and then I'm going to come back to you in Corinth and visit you once again, and then I'm going back to Judea, back to Jerusalem. So he said, I'm intending to visit you twice, but his plans had changed. And instead of going to Corinth first and then to Macedonia, he decided first to go to Macedonia in northern Greece and then to southern Greece and visit the Corinthians. So he changed his travel plans. And there are some who have criticized Paul for that, say, well, you can't depend on Paul. He says one thing and he does another. He says yes, but then he says no. Or he says no, and then he says yes. That's how they are accusing him of a lack of integrity, because his travel plans changed. But Paul is saying, listen, I'm coming to you, but circumstances changed, and that's what changed my plans. So Paul goes on to say, listen, as surely as God is faithful, Our message to you is not yes and no. For the Son of God, Jesus Christ, who is preached among you by us, by me and by Silas and by Timothy, was not yes and no, but in him it was always yes. So Paul says, listen, I've always acted with integrity. I had intended one thing, but plans change. And your accusations against me are simply not founded on reality. The circumstances changed. That's why I had to change my travel plans. But I say, yes, I am coming to you. Yes, I will visit you. Yes, I will be with you. So even though the itinerary changed, my commitment to you has not changed. We all understand that. And there are times when we make plans and then circumstances force us to change those plans. And we alter them a slight bit, especially with travel plans. That's what had happened to Paul. But he says, my yes to you is always yes. As Christ's yes is always yes. I'm following Jesus. And I am intending to come to you. So Paul just wants them to understand I'm always acting with integrity as best as I can. And I will be coming to see you. Hope you join us tomorrow. We'll continue looking at the latter part of chapter 1 in the book of 2 Corinthians. So join us next time for our 5-minute Bible study in this book of 2 Corinthians.